From viral sensation to a staggering 90% loss of her fan base in mere months, Hailey Welch's career imploded with shocking speed. Today, we're dissecting the catastrophic downfall of Hailey Welch, the Tuah Girl. We'll expose how her blatant attempts to exploit her audience, compounded by a series of deceptive interviews and a truly disastrous comeback, completely obliterated her online presence, serving as a chilling blueprint on precisely how not to navigate fleeting internet fame. Imagine your 15 minutes of fame arrives. What's the absolute worst decision you could make that would instantly alienate your entire newfound audience and derail your career? Share your catastrophic scenario in the comments below. Hailey Welch, famously known as the Tuah Girl, stands as a prime example of how quickly an online presence can self-destruct when built on exploitation and deceit. Her rapid descent from meme queen to digital pariah serves as a stark warning to anyone chasing fleeting internet notoriety. The initial public adoration swiftly morphed into widespread condemnation as she moved from openly taking advantage of her nascent fanbase to outright fabricating narratives. The most damning evidence? Her public interview with Coffeezillas, where she brazenly denied any wrongdoing despite mounting evidence to the contrary. This flagrant disregard for truth and her audience's trust quickly put all of Hailey's social media statistics squarely in the red, indicating a rapid and consistent decline. What started as a dip in engagement soon accelerated into a freefall, making it abundantly clear that this initial decline was merely the prelude to a much larger career collapse. The public, once captivated, witnessed her emotional, if not entirely convincing plea. "Thank you to all my true fans and all the people that actually watch my stuff and they keep up with me. We're trying to sort out all the pieces and stuff to get all this figured out and make everything right. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry. No, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Everything's going to be good, we're going to be good." Such performances, however, proved insufficient to stem the tide of public disapproval. Exploiting trust extinguishes opportunity. Just 2 months prior to her public implosion, a previous examination of Hailey's journey to online notoriety highlighted a critical flaw: her propensity to leverage her meme status for personal gain, even at the cost of her burgeoning platform. Hailey possessed the unique ability to parlay viral fame into a notable podcasting career, a legitimate avenue for sustained influence. Yet, she chose to risk it all, not for a creative endeavor, but for a highly controversial crypto pump and dump scheme. She openly promoted the Hawk token, telling her followers, "Hey y'all, it's Hailey, and I just want to say thank you for joining my space, and I also want to thank you for my 15,000 holders. The plan is to give these coins to my real fans, the ones that buy my merch, watch my podcast, donate to my charity." This thinly veiled promise of altruism was swiftly exposed as a calculated maneuver. Following the fallout from this dubious crypto project, Hailey completely vanished from social media. Her strategy was clear: disappear, allow the public outrage to subside, and hope the heat would eventually die down. This vanishing act was a desperate gamble, a retreat into the shadows with the hope that time would somehow erase the damage. A quick exit often confirms culpability. After a period of strategic silence, Hailey Welch evidently felt the waters were calm enough for a re-entry. On February 6, 2025, a new episode of the Tuah podcast was leaked online, offering fans a front-row seat to a masterclass in deflection and victimhood. For a grueling 40 minutes, Hailey engaged in an extensive blame game, meticulously absolving herself of any responsibility for the crypto debacle. The initial moments of the interview were a calculated attempt to disarm viewers, portraying Hailey as the innocent party, going so far as to feign tears while declaring, "Oh my god, I'm going to cry. No, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Everything's going to be good, we're going to be good." She positioned herself as a naive newcomer to the complex world of cryptocurrency, stating, 99% of these people don't know shit about crypto, just like you, and I'm one of them." Exactly. She even lamented the timing, suggesting, "The ongoing joke on CT right now is like, if she just did this 2 days after Trump, she'd be okay." This narrative, however, glossed over the fundamental issue, the method of the launch, which was undeniably flawed and predatory. She admitted, "I'm sure that's where I messed up for sure." But this was framed as a mistake of trusting the wrong people, not a flaw in her own intentions. True accountability begins with honest self-reflection. To lend an air of legitimacy to her carefully crafted comeback, FaZe, the interviewer, prefaced the interaction with emphatic declarations of transparency as their top priority. He stated, "I think that it's really important at this point to be totally transparent about everything that happened with you and your partners and this launch and in crypto." To underscore the purported seriousness, FaZe brought in Thread Guy, described as the biggest streamer in crypto, and Frank DGOs, a successful project launcher and high-level trader, both presented as sharp, front-facing experts committed to the crypto space. The gravity of the situation, the damage to her audience, and the immense trust she had squandered would lead any reasonable person to believe that repairing her career would take precedence over profit. However, barely 5 minutes into this supposedly career-defining interview, Hailey shamelessly inserted a sponsored segment, explicitly designed to further profit from the very fan base she had already exploited. Promoting Game Time, she gushed, "Game Time believes in me, y'all, and I believe in them. Game Time's more loyal than most of y'all's mans out here. Yeah, some of those guys just leave at the first opportunity they get. Not Game Time. Hell yeah, this podcast ain't going nowhere, and neither are them Game Time deals." This blatant prioritization of personal financial gain over genuine restitution sent a clear, damaging message to her audience. Words ring hollow when actions contradict them. Despite openly prioritizing her own financial gain over any sincere apology or gesture towards her wronged fans, Hailey paradoxically continued to portray her intentions for the Hawk token as purely altruistic. She claimed the idea was brought to me like months ago, and that she was initially hesitant, stating, "I don't know about it." She then scapegoated her former collaborator, Doc Hollywood, painting him as a friend of a friend, who probably more or less overstated his qualifications and was her biggest mistake. This narrative presented her as a naive victim, duped by a shady individual. Furthermore, she took aim at her most prominent critic, Coffeezilla, describing him as a scary guy whom one would never want to have a conversation with. This personal attack was a clear attempt to discredit a figure known for his investigative journalism in the crypto space. Her co-hosts attempted to soften this, stating, "We're a little more charitable than Coffee. Coffee definitely, like, you know what I mean? He definitely asking the right questions. It's the way that he asks him. Maybe. That's why you guys can't really, like, find a spot to, like, talk or have, like, any sort of conversation with each other." Yet, when asked if she was scared by questions coming from Coffeezilla, she immediately responded, "Oh, that scares me if they come from him." This reflexive fear spoke volumes about her reluctance to face uncomfortable truths. Blaming others only amplifies one's own culpability. Hailey's meticulously crafted narrative painted her as a passive observer, genuinely wanting the best for her fans. However, the cold, hard facts of her business deal with Doc Hollywood told a vastly different story. Her team revealed the structure, a brand image likeness deal that paid her $125,000 upfront, with an additional $200,000 due after the coin's launch within 30 days. Beyond the immediate cash, she was supposedly guaranteed full transparency to tokenomics and everything going on. Crucially, the back-end participation was to always be mutually agreed, with a 10% allocation of the token placed on a 1-year lock, followed by a 3-year drip. Of that 10%, half was supposed to go to her, meaning she was contractually entitled to 5% of the total token supply. This was far from the measly piece of the pie narrative she later spun. Her lawyer also claimed that the contract with Doc Hollywood didn't match the tokenomics they were given, stating this discrepancy was only noticed after the fact. This implies gross negligence, or worse, a deliberate misrepresentation. The contract itself reeked of mismanagement. Tokenomics weren't accurately discussed. Hailey's team didn't even know the identity of the developers creating the product they were shilling, and a staggering 80% of the supply remained under the control of unknown individuals. This raises an obvious, damning question. How on earth did they ever genuinely believe this project would work out well for investors? Truth, like water, eventually finds its cracks. If you're finding this deep dive into the harsh realities of internet fame and the consequences of deception compelling, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We continuously expose the unfiltered truths behind online controversies, ensuring you're always in the know. Your support helps us keep bringing these stories to light. Despite the glaring inconsistencies and gross incompetence displayed by Hailey and her team, the Phase interview surprisingly shifted focus, suggesting the real issue with the Hawk token was merely that people were labeling it a scam, and in doing so, making crypto look bad. This incredible deflection missed the fundamental point entirely. The co-hosts lamented, "The issue for you is the millions and millions of people who farmed views off this and made stories about this and covered it. Your average fan just sees crypto scam." They argued that this incident fed into crypto's bad rap, blaming a flawed onboarding process and a language barrier for general misunderstanding. This narrative, however, conveniently ignored the predatory nature of the project itself. They even brought up the pre-sale structure, revealing a 17% allocation that raised $2.8 million. mostly from Asia-based investors, with a purported 1-month lock with a 1-year drip after that. The fact that this didn't happen on-chain, as Hailey's lawyer admitted, was conveniently downplayed. Thankfully, one of the co-hosts eventually brought a semblance of accountability back into the conversation, suggesting a concrete path to restitution. He proposed, "I think if you took all the money that you made from the deal, whatever, and just bought back the coin and then locked it up, that's a very clear action that you can make back to the community." This clear, actionable step, a genuine gesture of goodwill, was precisely what was needed. Deflection only amplifies existing distrust. When presented with a clear path to begin undoing the financial havoc they had wreaked, one would naturally assume Hailey's team, given their public claims of good intentions, would eagerly seize the opportunity. Instead, they had other, far more self-serving plans. They shamelessly exploited the immense hype surrounding the FaZe interview to briefly pump the price of Hawk and then dump large quantities of the token almost immediately after the interview was published. This blatant act of market manipulation was quickly exposed by FaZe himself, who subsequently issued a tweet completely disavowing the interview. FaZe's tweet revealed that he had heavy stipulations, including not allowing markets to be manipulated by leaking the episode's existence before a resolution was found, and that Hailey's team find a real solution regarding the money she made. FaZe explicitly stated that these conditions were non-starters, and that the episode was only supposed to be released if they explicitly greenlit it. He then exposed the truth behind the leak. "We noticed a random spike in volume on the coin, along with random messages asking if we did the podcast." Very clearly, her team was not as solid as they claimed to be. Now today, the episode randomly gets leaked. The price of Hawk is pumping and they completely effing fumbled the bag yet again. What a effing mess. Once again, Hailey's insatiable greed and profound lack of concern for her fans landed her squarely in Coffeezilla's crosshairs. By February 8, 2025, Coffeezilla released his own investigative video, Hawk Tuah is Back, which meticulously dissected the disastrous state of Hailey's career and unveiled explosive, exclusive information from behind the scenes, directly contradicting Hailey's manufactured narrative. Short-term gains fueled by deception guarantee long-term ruin. Coffeezilla's investigation systematically dismantled Hailey's claims. He revealed that Hailey's lawyer had actually invited him onto her podcast, insisting, "How much Hailey Welch liked me." This directly contradicted Hailey's public claim that Coffeezilla was a scary guy whom she wouldn't want to speak with. Coffeezilla, while declining the podcast appearance, demanded answers about the agreement between Hailey's team and Doc Hollywood. Hailey's position had been, "Oh, I was a victim. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how much I was barely going to make money." This narrative presented her as a naive participant, receiving a terrible deal of $125,000 plus half of 10% of the tokens locked for a year. Coffeezilla simply asked to see the contract, which Hailey's team were not able to give. He was told that Doc Hollywood himself had stated, "We'll do best to make it as simple as possible. The pre-sale raise is 50-50. Project Hailey fees for market making and LP is split between us and Hailey 50-50. This was a drastically different story than the one Hailey's team was peddling. "That's millions of dollars pre-sale," Coffeezilla stated, "or like $1 million. And that's what I say. The story is very different." Despite Hailey's team denying this evidence, Coffeezilla's investigation revealed their attempt to downplay their profit because it would likely implicate them legally. He pointed out that Doc Hollywood himself had indicated the project would cost a few $100,000, yet the pre-sale alone raised $2.8 million, plus an additional $1 million in fees, totaling almost $4 million. Contractually, Hailey was owed like $1.6 million. The house of cards collapses when confronted with the truth. Faced with irrefutable evidence and no other viable avenue for denial, Hailey's team was finally forced to admit that, despite their public narrative, she was indeed entitled to a significant portion of the profits. Her lawyer conceded, "You're right that as it stands, she may be entitled to whatever amounts. However, she was supposed to have mutual approval on tokenomics. Her not being given the opportunity to approve the transaction fees and pre-sale identities led to the end result." This revelation directly contradicted everything they had publicly stated on the podcast, exposing their deception. Coffeezilla succinctly summarized the gravity of the situation. "You're right, she may be entitled to millions of dollars from a scam." This admission unequivocally discredited their entire victim narrative. It became undeniable that Hailey and her team were willing to act dishonestly, even with those attempting to help them rectify the situation. Their concern for their fans appeared only when it bolstered Hailey's public image. They would have gladly taken the substantial profits from the token if it didn't carry the very real possibility of legal consequences or jail time. Fortunately for Hailey, she would not face severe legal repercussions. The SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, later dropped their charges against her. Her attorney publicly stated to TMZ that the SEC closed the investigation without making any findings against or seeking any monetary sanctions from Hailey, because they did not bring any action against her. There are no restrictions on what she can do in regards to crypto or securities in the future. This legal reprieve, however, did little to mend her shattered public image. Legal exoneration does not equate to moral absolution. With her legal troubles seemingly behind her, Hailey presumably believed she could simply put everything in the past and resume her normal podcast uploads, as if nothing had transpired. Sadly for her, the internet, with its unforgiving memory, was not so easily swayed. On April 8, 2025, Hailey uploaded the 16th episode of the Tuah podcast, featuring none other than KSI as her main guest. She announced, "Welcome back to another episode of Talk to Him. Now we're the official owners of Talk to Him, and we may or may not have flew to London to get a very special guest for you. We got KSI, yo, live in the flesh, baby." It was one thing to shamelessly attempt to crawl back to the audience she had demonstrably stolen from, but it was another entirely to deliver one of the most uninteresting, vapid interviews on the entire internet. Throughout the duration of the podcast, Hailey and her co-host barely managed to ask any worthwhile questions. They clearly relied entirely on KSI's presence and star power to carry the conversation, a fact that her disillusioned fans were all too willing to point out. One scathing comment perfectly encapsulated the sentiment. When the guest has to carry the conversation on a podcast, you know it's cooked. Overall, the video was met with overwhelming negativity, garnering thousands of dislikes and achieving one of the lowest view counts on her channel, despite featuring a universally recognized, high-profile guest like KSI. The collective apathy was palpable, a clear indication that her audience had simply moved on. When content becomes a vessel for profit, the audience eventually disembarks. Hailey Welch's story is a profound and unsettling blueprint on how to spectacularly lose an entire audience through a combination of calculated exploitation, rampant dishonesty, and a complete lack of genuine concern for her supporters. Her journey from viral meme to crypto pariah, punctuated by disingenuous interviews and a desperate, ill-conceived comeback, stands as a stark warning to anyone seeking sustained success in the fickle landscape of online influence. She believed she could have her cake and eat it too, milking her audience with a scam coin and then returning to be welcomed with open arms. The internet, however, is a harsh mistress, and its memory, while sometimes short, can be unforgiving when trust is so thoroughly breached. No matter how desperately Hailey attempts to prolong her 15 minutes of fame, it truly seems her time in the spotlight has definitively come to an end.